Well, welcome everyone to our October Lunch and Learn. If you would, please just introduce yourself in the chat, who you are and where you're at and your connection to Central. Great to have you all here with us. This is, of course, our third Thursday's Lunch and Learn. Every third Thursday, excuse me, I just finished my lunch. Every third Thursday, we gather at noon Central Time on Zoom to hear from one of our faculty, staff, students, or alums about their area of ministry or passion or personal interest. And so we're excited that you all have joined us today to hear from Dr. Kilmer. Reverend Dr. Julie Kilmer is Central Supplemental Associate Professor of Theology and Ethics and Director of our Chaplaincy Studies programs. Of course, excuse me, it is a lunch and learn, and you are invited to eat your lunch or whatever snack or meal you may need at whatever part of the world you're in at this time. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Kilmer for our session today on exploring chaplaincy.
Hello, it's good to see you. I know most of you, but not everyone. So we have a small group here, and some of you have heard much of this from me before. So I'm hoping you'll participate and join in as you can, either with questions or comments. Some of the stories I'll share you may have heard as well. We'll see. We're going to do a few things, mostly an exploration of, considering chaplaincy, either in adding it to your studies or discerning whether it's the best call for you. A little bit more about myself. I've worked at Central for 10 years. I'm still currently the director of the site in Michigan, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and it's snowing here. So if I'm depressed today or flat in my presentation, it's because I'm depressed. It is snowing, seriously. And mostly some rain, but big snowflakes. So I have to admit I'm sad about that. I'm also a chaplain. I served as a chaplain in hospice for 8 years, and I also served as the bereavement coordinator for that agency. And then more recently, in the last 6 years, I have served as the director of spiritual life at a large retirement community, which means I'm the chaplain, I'm the head chaplain. We have 400 residents and about 425 staff. And it's a graduated retirement community. So you can come in independent living and own your own home here, or you can be in an apartment, but you also might be in assisted living or, rehab, or there's memory care. So 4 units of memory care. So I do a little bit of everything in my work as a chaplain here. And I've been teaching now in the Chaplaincy Studies program for over a year. It's very exciting, this new work we're doing here at Central, and we're getting lots of interest. So I think it's important that we, pause and think about what does that mean, and what might it mean for you in your life. So I'd like to begin really with a prayer that's one of my favorites. It's probably one you know, but I think it's appropriate for chaplaincy, and it's the Prayer of Unknowing by Thomas Merton. So let's bow our heads. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I'm actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I'm doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear. You are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. Amen. So, I think that's fitting in several ways, because in chaplaincy, we don't have all the answers, and we're not meant to. We may not know what type of chaplaincy we're called to do. We might spend time with people that are in the process of dying, and they have those same questions, but yet we know that our God is with us, and they're not alone, and neither are we. So we can walk alongside them. I think that's central to who, and what chaplaincy really is all about. I also looked for a verse I thought that might be appropriate for today. I was looking at 2 Timothy 2, verse 15, and this is from the New Revised Standard Version Updated Edition. Did you know there's an updated edition? There is, and it supposedly has 2,000 updates, but I don't know the degree to which it's updating. Is it making the T a capital T, or is it major changes? I haven't yet noticed some of the more significant ones, but there is an updated edition. So here's this verse. Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved by God, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly explaining the word of truth. So as we do chaplaincy, we are called, are we not? And to speak our truth the best that we're able, and to know that God is and always with us. So I'm a little curious first, before we dive into all the different kinds of chaplaincy. I know most of you, but where do you fall? Who wants to share? What is it that drew you to attending this? I know why my current students are with us, and you can go ahead and tell them why. Gary can go first. You confess first, Gary.
Extra credit.
Extra credit, yes. I gave my students extra credit for coming. So did Gypsy too. But Tony was my student, but you're not now. I could give you extra credit if you'd like.
I'm sure that would help me a lot. I actually am here because you are a chaplain, and I learned quite a bit from you, and I am also a chaplain. And so there's always learning to be done. So I'm here.
Well, welcome, and I hope that you'll add in, to the conversation as I present a few things. Let's see, Debbie.
Well, Jessica, can I have extra credit for showing up?
I'll give you extra credit.
Yeah,
Excellent.
can.
But Jess is my instructor right now, but I'll take it. I have a friend who does chaplaincy with the sheriff's department, and as I'm looking toward graduation next May and still not sure why exactly God called me to seminary, I'm exploring avenues. So that's why I'm here today.
Well, welcome. And
Thank you.
I think I can probably speak for a couple people in this group, if I might, and say there's a number of people in this group, or even this small group, that don't know why God called them to seminary either. Gypsy's like, yeah, that'd be me. And it was me too. That's where I was. So no need to feel alone there. Let's
Thank
see.
you.
Tracy?
There. Okay, got live. Tell me the question again, please.
Oh, just to express, maybe share with us your interest in chaplaincy or how you're connected. And
when I was doing my MDiv studies at Central, I had come out of kind of a bad church situation, and several professors, one who is on right now, said, you have to look at hospice chaplaincy. So I did it, and I did it for 12 years. Then my position was eliminated, so now I'm figuring out what's next. There he is. He's smiling. He's responsible for this.
Terry's
for the good part.
Well, we're glad you're here, Tracy, and thank you, Terry, for encouraging Tracy to go into chaplaincy. That's great. We're glad you're here. All right, so I just thought that maybe one of the things we needed to consider is, why would we go into chaplaincy? And I tell the story in my classes. I was in, CPE, because it was required by my denomination, clinical pastoral education. I'm ordained in the United Church of Christ, UCC. The facility where I work now is Methodist / Presbyterian, but I serve a small church that's Church of the Brethren. So, a little bit of everything. I went to a Methodist seminary years ago, but CPE was required, so I was working in a hospital doing my task of CPE. And because I had had some experience with people dying in my own life, my personal life, they assigned me to ICU. But I was very inexperienced at praying aloud with people. But I didn't tell them that because I didn't want to look like an idiot. So I didn't tell them. But I thought, I can do this. God will be with me. So I went to visit the people in ICU. And one of the first people I saw, I walked into the room and he was unconscious. I thought, okay, I know you're supposed to pray aloud. I believe that God is here and that this person will hear me. So I thought, well, this feels very awkward. This doesn't really feel right to me. It seems the right thing to do. So I prayed aloud and it still felt horrible to me. And I left. Then I tried to contact the family and I tried to learn from the nurses and the doctors, tell me about this person. Is it a person of faith? Does this person Christian, not Christian, doesn't have any affiliation? And the family was never there. And there was nothing in the chart either. And I tried to call and I went back again the next day. And this person's in ICU and he's unconscious. So we wonder about whether he would live. And I again pray aloud. And it still feels out of order to me. It doesn't feel right. I must be doing something wrong. And this goes on for several days. And the family never comes. And I never learn what's really happened. And then I go into the room and the man is sitting up. And I say, good morning, Mr. So-and-so. And he says, get out. Get out of my room. You prayed for me. And I'm an atheist. Get out. So I learned a great deal in that moment. That I didn't have permission to be praying. And my intuition told me all along that what I was thinking would be helpful was not. And I didn't trust it. So that's my confession. But one of the hard-earned lessons of what it means, when you engage with someone else, to think about the boundaries and what's appropriate and learning about the person in advance and trusting your intuition and maybe what God is telling you. Now, I know the argument could be that my prayer saved his life. I'm not there with that and understanding that theology, but some might say that. But that was interesting, and it drew me into, thinking about what it means to walk with someone else, to companion them, to be present deeply with them. And so I looked more deeply into chaplaincy after I completed CPE. So one of the things, of course, that we consider is all the different kinds of chaplaincy. So as I've been going along in the intro class, I've been listing them, putting a list together. So I'm going to screen share here and show you my list. And there might be people that can add to this, I would think, or we can talk a little bit about these. Let's see. There we go. All right, so we're exploring chaplaincy and we're considering, all the different kinds, and some of these, it's true, are full-time and some of them are part-time. Some of them are volunteer. Some of them, I'm not sure how you get paid to do it actually, but we'll look at them. There's the prayer that we said. There's the verse. And here's the beginning of my list. It's a very long list. Many times people think of chaplaincy as in the military, and you can serve the military as a chaplain for the Army, Navy, Air Force, or Coast Guard. They do have requirements of a degree in religion, tends to be an MDiv and 4 units of CPE. And it's also very common for people to say hospice and healthcare. That's where people work, or in bereavement, or in a retirement community like I am. And yes, I'm considered part of the healthcare team. Sometimes people will say, let's look at the prison system or jails, and there are chaplains there. Sometimes in local areas, these are volunteers, other times it's full-time. And There are people that work in public safety, as someone had named, I think someone had said they have a friend that worked in this area as a chaplain. Or in education, some people are college chaplains, or even in the elementary and middle schools, there are people, if it's a school attached to some kind of faith tradition, what will be a chaplain there? Some seminaries have chaplains. We learned in our classes that corporate and industry chaplains are doing much more. It's much more common for like Tyson Foods. One of our graduates works for Tyson, and she was explaining, what it was like to work in a very large corporation and be the only chaplain. First responder chaplaincies or placements with FEMA in response to disasters, both in the United States and around the world. I also learned about labor or union chaplains that the UAW hires, a lot of them. And there's community chaplains too for various organizations. Here's some more though. That's just a short list. We're just getting started. Nursing home chaplains, social work chaplains. There's such a thing as a prayer chaplain or chaplains that work in funeral homes. Now we have someone in our class for this time that wants to be a chaplain for an NFL team. So I think that's interesting because, do you believe that chaplains should pray for a certain team to win and that God will help that team win? How do you be present with the team and what do you pray and what does that look like? And of course, there's a new, very popular chaplaincy that's working with a veterinarian or animal chaplaincy. I'm not sure I like that particular title, but there's such deep need for people that love their animals. And as the animal goes on to hospice care, that you go to the home or that you go to a site where the animal is buried. Sometimes there are places that are dedicated to burying animals and do an actual funeral service for that pet. There's other roles for this animal chaplain that you work with the hospice folks that's working with the person that's passing, that's going to die, and you help the pet understand that their owner is passing. So I think that's very interesting. And there are some places, I've not seen it in seminaries, that are developing courses around animal chaplaincy. And I think there'd be a deep need there. Some of the youth centers, community centers have chaplains. Or of course, maybe if you really aspire to it, you could be chaplain of the US Senate, or chaplain of the US House of Representatives, or chaplain to the Speaker of the House. Wouldn't that be something? And the royals, some of the royal families have had chaplains. Another one that is becoming more popular and I think definitely needed are environmental chaplains. I haven't seen where those folks have been paid. There are lists available for people that are willing to speak on these issues. Cruise ships have chaplains. Tony's going to sign up to be a cruise ship chaplain, right? So might be interesting. There's private clubs, community teams. The scout troops sometimes have chaplains. Airports have chaplains. Nightclubs and theaters sometimes have chaplains. So I'd like to pause here and just have us think about and chat about some of these. What did you think of that list? Anything you aspired to or found surprising?
And national parks also.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
Forgot that one. I knew we could add to this list.
There's actually another one that's not very well known. It's a movement chaplain.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and that's kind of hopefully picking up soon.
Can you say a little bit more about that? I'm not sure everybody would know that.
It's chaplaincy to activists, people who are working in activism. It's hard work and sometimes they just need the presence. They need someone to talk to. And so that's what we're, I'm looking at that for my capstone project. So that.
Well, that's lovely. I would love to hear more about that when you write that paper.
And need to learn more about it first, but yeah, for sure.
See our
Dr. Kilmer,
yes, go ahead.
my husband and I are getting ready to relocate, and he's a chaplain, so he's been looking for positions where we're going. And one that he has seen recently is a chaplain to the streets. We're going to the Bay Area that has a significant problem with the unhoused, or significant issues around homelessness and the unhoused. And one of the counties has a chaplain to the streets.
So this is paid by the city, a paid position?
I think it's the county government, but yes, that was a new one to us.
Mhm.
We used to have racetrack ministries in the American Baptist churches. I don't know if anyone is doing that now, but I think they were supported by national ministries
Yeah, that's right.
for racetracks.
I've
Hmm.
also
Makes me
encountered,
want to think that you're praying for the horses, but
I think it was it horses or was it cars? I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of NASCAR country. It's probably car racing. Although the horses may have them too.
Actually, I'm not sure. It might have been either or both. Yeah. But it was interesting. Jessica, you were saying something though.
I was going to add, I've encountered infertility chaplains before. So separate from what you might find in a hospital, but at an infertility clinic.
see, it's amazing. What I think is this points to, though, is the need, the great deep need for chaplaincy. And much of the research now is showing that as our churches decline, the need and request for chaplain services is increasing across lots of different areas. As you can see, the breadth and width of all of these that we listed reflects that. Now, I think, yeah, I mean, Terry, you were going to say something.
No, I was saying yes, but thinking of the expansion of corporate chaplaincies in the 20 plus years that I've been teaching. There was a student when we were back on the old campus, so about 20 years ago. Steve went into marketplace ministries, which was relatively small at that time, and now it's huge. I'm told, international.
Mhm.
And then there's another chaplaincy organization out of New York City that contracts with various corporations for chaplaincy services, and I believe they have hundreds of chaplains too. So
Mhm.
it's a niche that has grown amazingly in 20 years.
Well, and within the last 5 years, it's really increased both in response to COVID and in response to the need to maintain employees, because there's so many people leaving their positions so quickly. The hope here where I'm at is that we will somehow provide some stability. I think that's an interesting request, that we would be in relationship with people that work here and encourage them to stay put. I'm like, does that have any direct connection to faith in any way? Possibly. But I think reducing stress, I mean, there's a lot of anxiety and stress. For example, we're often called upon to sort of attend the meet and greet when we're welcoming people or people are training to join our team here, because so often it's not uncommon that as they're training their first day at work, as to work in the dining room or work as a CNA or maybe a nurse, they're on their phones negotiating with another company for another job. At the same time, they're at the training. And we're supposed to provide, a happy place. I'm like, is that my job? It's interesting. So I'm not sure.
That occurred to me, looking at it from an ethics perspective too, which is what you're doing right now, Julie, is I thought of that in terms of the Tyson Foods.
Mhm.
They were hiring 100 chaplains, and our recent alum, Christine, is very happy working with Tyson And I think what one would have to do is meet their needs without without loyalties to the person who's paying you, because sometimes those needs would involve helping them to move on from an
Yes.
unhealthy work environment, if that's what it is. And I presume that's what it is most places. So yeah, so one would have to be willing to exercise those chaplaincy virtues of the person in front of you being your priority as opposed to your employer. That would be the case really anywhere. Hospitals too. Any place that could be potentially not a good working environment for those to whom you're ministering. So.
Well, we had Christine come and visit our class. She came and was a guest speaker. So
I heard that.
Yeah, her emphasis a lot, I think, was, and the students may want to participate here and add to what you thought she was saying, but a lot of it was interfaith connections. And she had a deep passion for her work, but there were so many employees and one chaplain. You know, I'm not sure how much.
And she had more than one site as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And different groups of people speaking different languages, having different religions, people coming across the border. I mean, there were drastically different groups of people.
But kudos to Tyson for wanting to meet their spiritual needs.
Mm-hmm.
And to people like Christine who are willing to enter really difficult work environments with huge ethical issues, even as to the existence of such corporations, and willing to enter into those environments so as to be present for people who clearly do have needs just by virtue of the environment and what they do, but other concerns as well, including immigration issues. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and sort of related to that, I mean, not only feeling that call to chaplaincy and recognizing that that's where you want to serve, picking where you'll work, as Angie's husband is doing, looking at the agency and its values and that system that you'd work in is critical. Where I'm at, as the director of spiritual life, I am part of the leadership team, which means that I'm, up meeting with the CEO and I'm expected to carry the mission and vision of the company forward. And for the most part, that's fine. We're affiliated with the Methodist Church. I can do that. But recently, I shared with my students, I had a staff member come into my office and burst into tears and shut the door and say, "You're the only person I can tell this to, but I got caught shoplifting and I don't want to lose my job." Like, okay, so she sat down and explained to me she had taken a couple of containers of yogurt from Walmart, but they had caught her and they called her in. And she didn't know if they were pressing charges, and there was a police officer there. And she's like, I'm a single mom and I'm really stressed because my teenage son has been driving me crazy. And she said, "I just made a mistake. I've never done this before." But when I looked into it a little bit, as she waited and waited to hear for a couple of days about whether they were pressing charges, would she lose her job? And the answer was yes, if they press charges. And I talked to my supervisor who said, "Well, just talk to HR, they'll understand." But all this time, I'm not relaying the name of the person. I'm holding confidences, right? I'm just obtaining information about how the system works. But I could tell in several of my meetings with HR, they were this close to asking me who it was. And it turns out in the end, they didn't press charges against the person. Thank goodness. I mean, she worked here for more than 10 years and loved her job. And So it all worked out fine. But I thought it was interesting that they might ask me the name of the person. And I wondered what I would do then, because I thought I'm not telling them, but I wondered if I'd lose my job. And as a chaplain, one has to be able to maintain confidentiality in all settings, always. So I came up to that line a little close recently. I don't know. Tracy, did you ever have anything like that happen in hospice in your work? Maybe Tony too. You're muted. You're still muted.
I've been in some pretty sticky situations. Well, this isn't the same as the experience you've just told, but one of my stickiest ones where it's the only place I was not allowed to go back, a facility where I'd had really good relationships. But one of our patients got it in her head that she wanted to die quickly. And I worked for a Catholic organization, and that created real ethical problems because she was of another faith. She was going around telling everybody that would listen to her, I'm going to get to be with my husband in just a couple of days, and the Catholics are going to help me. Not exactly. And that got really, really sticky from several different directions. So I won't go into a long story about it, but things like that can happen. And yes, it's a bit of an ethical dilemma for me, but I pursued it through the channels that I felt like were appropriate for me. But it was so sticky, even the people I took it to didn't want to have anything to do with it. So yeah, that's one.
I served for a number of years when I was pastoring as a volunteer chaplain for the police department. I guess without saying too much on a recorded session, there were times when there were holding that and holding my commitments to social justice. There were times when I had to make some, just to kind of process things through and make some choices around things.
I think it's these things that make chaplaincy interesting, but also difficult. Both and you can come to places of theological quandaries as well. One of the persons that I worked with for a long time, for many years, described herself as spiritual and not religious, and was very comfortable chatting with me, and was a poet, and she was, very creative, and people loved her. She's very, very well known. So when it came time, when she did pass away very peacefully, to do the service, the family wanted to honor her quite deeply and honor her own belief systems and traditions. Well, where I work, we have a freestanding church. I mean, it's the chapel for this agency. So it looks like a Methodist church. Seats a couple hundred people. So the family said, well, since our loved one was not Christian, we don't want to have a Christian service. And that didn't faze me. I was okay with offering what would be helpful there. But then it went a little farther. They asked that I take the cross out of the chapel, take it down off the table, which it wasn't one big hanging one, but it was one I could be moved. So I had to think about that. It took me by surprise a little. Before I tell you what I did, what do you think about that? Some of you know what I did already. Am I compromising as a Christian chaplain to move the cross? or to represent my agency that, we're Christian, we're Presbyterian and Methodist. What do you think, Tony?
Oh, I can definitely tell you I would have removed it, because what's most important is the wishes of the family and the deceased, and that's primary. And I don't think God has a problem with that. So that's what I would not hesitate to do that. Now, if they want me to take it off the wall, it's attached to the wall, I'd have that would have to be worked on. But if it's just on the table, it's so easy to do that, and it harms nobody. But if it harms them to leave it, that's the problem.
Mhm. Any other thoughts?
Well, I mean, I'd say I'm with Tony on all that, not knowing if you have any contractual obligations as part of your, employment by a religious organization. But otherwise, yeah, I would move it as well.
Well, and that's what I did. I did move it, but reflecting upon it, all the paraments had crosses and Christian symbols on them. Every hymnal that was in the room had, symbols on it. There's a statue of Jesus in the bathroom, for goodness sake, It's like, and I actually picked it up and put it away, but then somebody else got it out before the service. So I was like, well, so they were happy that I moved the cross, but I didn't exactly erase all the presence of Christianity in the room. And in the end, they had me say the Lord's Prayer in that service, which surprised me. Because I'm like, what? What happened? I guess these things are not linked for some people. And they were very pleased, and it was fine. So I guess I just tell that story to relate that there are sometimes quandaries about ethical issues related to how you present your own faith, how you share the mission and vision of the institution you work with, or maybe even some passionate social justice pieces like Jessica was referring to. It's an interesting place. There's always things that are happening. There's just story after story. I'm sure Tony and everybody and Tracy and Jessica, people that serve as chaplains now, can tell you story after story. But one of my stories that I thought, you often are at the bedside, especially with hospice, but we're at the bedside of people that have declined, families present. It's a sacred time, a holy time when we're sharing, what this person's life has meant, and you're helping them pass peacefully. But I walked into a room and I didn't know the people at all. And I didn't know the resident that was, close to death. The chaplain that was assigned to that area wasn't available, so I got called. It was fine. So I expected that it would go as usual. And I walked in and the family's crying, and I say the prayer at the bedside with the family, and that goes well. And I can tell that her breathing, her breathing is slowing, her color is changing, and she does pass while I'm there, which is a very sacred time when that happens. But then something else happened that was interesting. The son, there were two sons in the room. The older son says, "Can you say the prayer again? Pray for my mother again." Now she has passed, so now I'm being asked to pray for someone who has died. "And can I videotape you while you're doing it?" And Terry's like, "What?" Yes, because they wanted to then share this with somebody who wasn't present. And I thought, and honestly, for me, I thought internally, I was going, "That's weird." Okay, but I thought, I guess I can do that. I mean, it doesn't harm anything, right? And it's a pastoral care response. So I kneel by the bedside, I say the prayer again, and they videotape me. And it felt hollow to me. But I guess it was good enough. They were happy that they did that. But I didn't want to, if I would have said no, based on what? That I don't pray for people that have already died? Thoughts? What do you think of that one?
Performance chaplaincy, huh?
It was. Like, what? You want me to do what?
I mean, I think in that minute,
Really, I was just going to say, it's not nearly as weird as having a statue of Jesus in the ladies' restroom.
I know.
Go ahead, Debbie.
well, I was just gonna say, you're still ministering to the family.
Mhm.
And so if they wanted to, share your prayer with other people who couldn't be there and that ministered to them, then I mean, I guess so. There's no ethical quandary there. I thought you were gonna say, and then she came back to life or something, and that would have been a whole different story.
Wow, I'm powerful. Uh-huh.
And she sat up and said, "Get out of my room."
Nice one. Actually,
Yeah,
I
I'm
had
kind-
flashes of it being posted like on Facebook and Twitter, and that's what I was thinking. What are they going to do with this video? But
Yeah, I remember you telling that story and thinking,
mhm.
when the patient is no longer with us, they have died, the family is now your focus. And if that gives them peace, you do it. Even though inside you're going, what? I don't know, but you do it because it's for them.
Yes,
And chaplains we're not about us, we're about them.
I think that's an important, critical thing to note. It's really not, it's not about me. We talk about that in class. And I think animal chaplaincy would be very powerful. I think there's a great need there. I'd like to see maybe Central develop some programming around that. I'm not sure what that would look like, but I think it would market well too for us. And I think there's a space there to offer that. But I think you'd have to market yourself to get paid to do it. I mean, I don't know who else would hire you. How would you get benefits to do that? So I think that's an interesting piece as well. I have one other story I'll share. And that's the one where I held the baby. So I get called, and very young couple, she had just given birth, was fully expected to go well. And it hadn't. The baby never took a breath. But it was a beautiful baby boy. And I walked into the room, and I didn't know them. And of course, they're crying. And they hand me the baby. And I take the baby, and I find that I'm standing there and I'm rocking the baby, because you just naturally hold a baby and you rock the baby. And I'm thinking, but the baby isn't breathing. Why am I rocking the baby? But the rhythm of the room and the liturgy that we shared, and then they wanted me to baptize the baby, which is also another issue, right? And so I christened it, right? But I found that was a meaningful moment to me, but a very difficult one. It's people that work as chaplains with children or babies are deeply called. They too have to have 4 or 5 units of CPE in order to do that. But that moment taught me a lot too, that sometimes we just react to what's happening without it being so ritualized or planned, or I've said the prayer at the bedside so many times that it sort of becomes comfortable for me. At that time, it woke me up. It woke me up to God's presence, to my own faith and what that meant, to think about death. You're reminded of gratitude. I mean, sometimes chaplain moments are just full, very full. So I'm not sure. I have on my PowerPoint on another note the classes that you take in order to get certified. But I have the feeling most of you, if you or not all of you, know that already. I can put them up. Debbie doesn't, so she wants to know, right? All right. I will share again. There we go. You see that? So we have 2 certificates in chaplaincy studies at Central. You can take it as a graduate level classes, and it's 4 credit, and you get a grade, right? That can be linked with your MDiv or the MACO degree or postgraduate or the professional, and that's not for credit, that's pass-fail. But you take 6 classes, and if you're already in a program at Central, you already take some of these classes. You already take Terry's ethics class. So you don't, you've already checked off a number of these boxes. You already take those. You may have taken the helping relationship class, which is in the counseling program. You can take these in any order. Right now I'm teaching the introduction to chaplaincy class. The caring ministries class is also part of the MDiv program. That's the pastoral care class. So you would have already taken that one. Next term, I'm teaching chaplaincy in hospice and elder care. And let's see, the practicum is at the end of your series of 6 classes. You can do it related to your particular area of interest in chaplaincy, but we strongly support taking CPE or clinical pastoral education. You can get credit for that. If you're trying to be board certified and take 4 classes of CPE, then only 1 can be taken in relationship to this certificate in chaplaincy studies program. So that is a quick explanation of the 6 classes that are required. I don't know, Terry, do you want to say anything about your ethics class, since it's part of the requirement?
Oh, it's the best of all, I'm sure. Yeah, nods.
I've taught it before, a long time ago.
Yeah, so there are, there's a week of intro, and then 5 2-week modules on different topics. And what my current chaplaincy students are doing as pass-fail is choosing 3 of the 5 modules to focus on and 3 of the 5 books to read. Although there's more participation even on some of those modules that they weren't going to select than anticipated. So, because who would want to miss any of the 5, really, right? But it's good to have their perspective along with the others who are coming at it from different vocational places or goals, and I think really any of the 5 modules are very relevant to chaplaincy. So all good.
An intro to chaplaincy class is really about discerning your call and to what type of chaplaincy. The caring ministries class is really about offering pastoral care to different groups of people or in different situations, whether it's coastal crisis or death of a child or suicide or GLBTQ people, or giving pastoral care to people that are differently abled, all of those kinds of really interesting pieces. And throughout that, we like to talk about, how does race and racism in our country or the divisions of our culture, influence or shape our pastoral care? What does that mean to us? So it's very interesting. These are, I think, interesting and exciting classes. Debbie.
I have a question if I can ask, because everybody here seems to be pretty well versed in what chaplaincy is. And are there places outside of a hospital where you can do CPE? Like I did actually I did a Google search for my area. I'm in the Milwaukee area, and Aurora Hospital, which is like a big hospital network up here, was one of the few places that offered CPE. And I don't want to be hospital based. If I were to go into chaplaincy, that wouldn't necessarily be my focus. I don't like the smell. My mom, my sister are both nurses, and it's not where I want to spend my time. So
but any CPE program that is accredited will benefit you. I encourage you to consider a program that's well developed, and they're often in hospitals. That would still apply to any chaplaincy work that you did. There are some programs that you can work through that are based in hospitals, but they'll let you do your placement somewhere else. But it really depends on where you're at and what kind of programming they offer. I didn't grow up in
35
Wisconsin, though.
35 years ago, I did some units of community-based chaplaincy out of the Onondaga Pastoral Counseling Center in Syracuse, New York. I suspect they were, probably the only entity that was doing that at that time. But my context was my congregation, and I went to the Pastoral Counseling Center for all of the standard didactics and an IPR group, but all of the rest. But my context was in my own congregation.
Okay.
And Tracy,
And
you were
I
nodding about that. Do you know some options? You want to speak to that?
Well, the accreditation piece of it is definitely a piece, but I am currently doing another CPE unit like Terry did 35 years ago, based at my church. And we'll see if anybody takes my piece of paper once it's all done. But it will look better on a resume for me that I'm currently doing CPE. And actually, I'm enjoying it. It was kind of like, I have to have a root canal. I have to do another unit of CPE. I never did the root canal, but I'm doing the CPE. But it's good for me, and it's very enriching, and it really is helping me to orient to where I am right now in life, and I'm getting along very well with my learning colleagues. So yes, the answer is there are some other programs that are not hospital based.
How are you supervised?
I am supervised by an accredited supervisor who is a diplomat in CPSP, also a supervisor with CPEI, which is trying to appear to be really, have their T's crossed and their I's dotted, but I know they're still in the accreditation process, very close. So it's a bit of a gamble for me, but I'm doing it anyhow. I give them $1,000 and I get a piece of paper and some good learning.
Yeah, where is it based out of?
Well, that particular supervisor of the supervisor is in Florida, but my guy is based in Kansas. So we'll see. Well, it's a good experience, and we'll see if it's worth anything, in the end, from a employability standpoint. I will say, it's probably worth saying, and you guys may have a good answer to this, but I had always been told in hospice, you have to have 1 unit of CPE for hospice, 4 units to work in a hospital, but 1 unit to work in hospice. And I'm hearing now that it's soon to be that you have to have 2 to work in hospice. I also hear that simply isn't true. That's not a federal mandate. I'm just covering my bases.
Yeah, it's very inconsistent in hospice across the country because there's no national, oversight. So it's very locally based about they require or not require.
Right.
Or, where they'll let the edges gray. Tony's trying to get in there.
Well, I was just gonna, we're referring to ACPE and the CSPS, and then CPEI. One that I would like suggest to avoid is HCMA,
Really?
Healthcare Chaplain Ministry Associates. They are extremely conservative
Okay,
and unaccredited, and they won't work with non-Christian chaplaincy programs. I did 12 years with them. I got a full unit and then some, but it's unaccredited. So I started over with an accredited with ACPE.
good.
Mhm.
So that's when you might want to just avoid, just, I mean,
That's
they're
good
great
to know.
people, but their main goal is evangelism, basically. And to me, that's a predatory activity when you have people in the hospital.
Mhm.
So that's my 2 cents. My hospital was ACPE. They're now CSPS. And they're a bit more on the spiritual side. ACPE is more psychological side. I
Mhm.
haven't been doing chaplaincy since I started MDiv because there's just, seminary, CBE, no, I can't. And breathe and live and sleep. But when and if that's the direction I continue, I will go back to doing the CSPS or whatever it is. And kind of enjoy having that spiritual side that I found myself missing through ACPE. Not that there's anything wrong with ACPE, but there is that side, and it's like, I'm not a psychologist. Don't want to be trained in that. But Debbie, to answer your question, there are a lot, you just have to dig for them, and you might even
Mhm.
go to their websites, ACPE or CSPS, and find out if they're listing any training programs.
Mhm.
Or like, you're in Milwaukee, I don't know, I was gonna say, look up one of the breweries, they have a program. But yeah, it just takes digging though.
So a week ago, when you say your hospital, you talk about research?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, because I was over there a week ago doing a bioethics ethics didactic for Rachel. So Rachel is CSPS, huh?
Yeah, they're switching over. When Dr. Harper and Dr.
Yeah.
Robertson retired,
Yeah.
she came in and they switched over to that. So
Okay. She seemed really, really good.
yeah.
She's
Yeah.
fabulous, and she's a
Mhm.
Presbyterian. Go Presbyterians.
That's
But
true. That's true.
she's the one that said to me, you will have to have 2 units to work in hospice. She is
Mhm.
convinced of this. So I've done a lot of digging since talking to her, and I can't find consistency, but doesn't
Right.
hurt to keep taking units.
Yeah, what I meant to say, Tracy, was that despite her not being Baptist, she's really good.
I got all my bases covered. I graduated from a Baptist seminary. I'm married to an Episcopalian, and according to ancestry.com, I'm half Jewish. So I got it all covered.
This all ought to count when you come to the pearly gates, I'm sure.
I have a lot of papers, a lot of visas.
But Debbie, all those acronyms that you're hearing, other than avoiding the HCMA, I mean, they're all accredited. You want to go somewhere that's accredited, and it does take a little digging to find one that will offer, in some sense, a practical way of engaging this work. Whether you're doing it as an intensive over the summer or you're doing it all year, and going once a week. I mean, there's various ways it's offered in different settings. So
When I was doing the ministry praxis, directing that, the contextualized ministry, we call it now, for many years, we did not accept course credit from anything but an ACPE accredited program. And that was intentional because CSPS had some problematic supervisors in our region. And we had a couple of bad experiences. And so we just made that policy, but that's changed. And my successor, Dr. Ruth Roselle, saw fit to widen the gates a little bit, because CSPS has is up to their game, and such that we now have people like Rachel Grainer who are with them and seem to be really, really good supervisors. So
when I can't stand the bickering between the different organizations, my husband and I pull up again from the movie The Life of Brian, that little clip where one group is completely against have you seen this? Against the other group. We're not the Judean People's Front. They're bad. We're the People's Front of Judea. We're good. And just to try to diffuse the insanity of, I've kind of seen warring between the different organizations, real bad behavior. So hopefully, Debbie, you can avoid all that.
the other issue was that ACPE did not recognize CSPS credits.
Right.
So if you want to be board certified, most programs recognize ACPE, but not the breakout group. And I guess that's changing, and there are more and more chaplaincy opportunities where the employer doesn't know the difference and don't care.
Right.
So I think that's what's happening. Is that what's happening, Julia?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
And anymore, some of the employers aren't requiring CPE at all unless you're in a hospital setting. I mean, they're requiring less to be a chaplain than it used to be, for good or bad.
Probably market. It probably, it's probably market driven. There aren't enough, which means that it's a good ministry vocation to pursue.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Well, I think this has been fabulous. I hope you have too. Went some interesting directions. I didn't know where it might go today, but it was fun. So
I'm leaving with an image of Jesus in the bathroom, and I want to see a photo of that. I just think that would make a great essay. Just
no, I'm going to videotape myself.
Going on here?
I'm going to stand in the bathroom. I'm going to videotape myself praying with Jesus and send it to you.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
The thing is, when you said a statue of Jesus in the bathroom, I thought of a statue of Jesus in the bathroom, not a
yes,
which is different than a statue of Jesus in the bathroom.
Yes. Okay then.
Just go ahead. I'm sorry, Gary.
Oh, I was just going to say it would be great if the statue of Jesus in the bathroom had like warm towels in his hand.
Oh, there we go. It's really just a little ceramic figure sitting on a shelf that's yellow. It's a yellow figurine, like
the kind that you would put on your dashboard.
So it's big,
Well,
Tony's trying to say something unrelated to that. Let's let her.
Well, no, my question actually was answered by you and Gary. What if it was a tall Jesus, 8 foot tall Jesus, or a little one? But you answered that for me. So
I did not have this conversation in my notes or the PowerPoint. I'll have to add that.
Yeah.
You just never know with the Lunch and Learn crew.
Yeah. You never warned me, Jessica. I know.
Well, thank you all so much.
I have to go plan a memorial now, so that's all I'll be thinking about. So.
Thank you so much for all of you for being here today, and especially thank you, Dr. Kilmer, for facilitating and leading our discussion today and our reflection time. This recording will be available later on Central's YouTube page, so I encourage you to check that out if you're interested, and you can send it to folks who may have wanted to be here but couldn't make it at this time. And also want to invite you to our November Lunch and Learn. That will be our last Lunch and Learn of the year. We don't do one in December. November 17th at noon Central Time. And for that Lunch and Learn, we will have Central Master of Divinity 2008 alum Joanna Heriter with us. Joanna recently released a book, which is an Advent devotional called Expecting Emmanuel. It's a devotional on the 8 women in the genealogy of Jesus. And so she will be here with us talking about, leading us in preparing for both personal and collective spiritual practices for Advent. So hope you'll join us for that.
There it is.
There it is. Look at
I'm
that.
supposed to be writing a book review of it.
Yeah.
I have my copy as well. It's I can't wait. I can't wait for Advent because I want to get into it. So hope you'll join us for that. It'll be just in time for Advent. Until then, everyone, please take care and be safe and healthy.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Bye.
Kilmer.